Alright, just gonna flip that log over and... Hi there. I'm your ghost host, TJ, and welcome to Out There After Dark. We know how much you guys love Reddit story episodes, so we decided to make it its own show, exclusively on Patreon. This first episode will be available for everyone, so you can all get a taste and decide if you'd like to support us. On this show, you'll join me by the Weird Club campfire as I tell you stories from Reddit. Some true, some fiction. All to give you a good scare after the sun goes down. And what better place to start than with some ghost stories? Welcome to Out There After Dark. Let's dive in. We'll start with a story submitted to Reddit just days ago by user PartySetting88. I have had a few experiences, 2 for sure alone as a child, 1 that's left no doubt as an adult, as I was not alone. But due to me being so young and alone, I usually don't tell them. But I will now. When I was young, I was very scared of the dark. Having one parent, my mother. She was usually fast asleep, and my sister would comfort me. As I grew older, about 5 or 6, it was dark, and I felt safe. It was not alone. I began to stare into the dark, to conquer my fear. I was going to see whatever it was that made me so scared before it saw me this time. I would lay down, eyes fake closed, watching in the dark, pretending to sleep. I'd pass out feeling like the man. Well, one night, I'm sleeping with my mom, and I felt more ballsy than ever. I was going to stare longer than I ever had and watch. I was truly becoming less scared. I waited and waited, watching. I want to say hours passed, but I'm really not sure. Out of nowhere, the entire room was filled with walking dark shadow people. I had to blink hard. The shadow figures looked busy, like they were moving with intention around the bed. In a split second, I couldn't believe it. There they were, faceless, darker than the dark. As my eyes had adjusted, they were pitch black. One had a hat, almost like a Secret Service guy from the 50s. I questioned how they got in the room. It was just empty. Then I saw a leg in the right corner of the room, at my feet on the side of the bed. A black leg phased right through the wall, followed by the rest of the black humanoid figure. I watched it phase into the room, walk from right to left at my feet, with my eyes burning into the figure. It noticed I was watching, and stopped at the center of the bed and faced me. I was not scared still. I actually couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was still completely feeling ballsy. Unbelievable as that sounds. The entity proceeds to then come to my side of the bed and stand at my waistline, staring down over me as I stared directly back up. I, looking for any feature on its blank, pitch black face. It then leaned directly over my face, and we stared longer. Only when its hand came reaching for me did I throw the covers over my head and move to wake my mom up. I was too embarrassed to wake her or tell her anything. but waking her soothed me. That was my first experience, that I never share due to me just being a child and witnessing it alone. The second, I'll keep short and sweet. Grandfather was possessed the last time I ever saw him. I had experienced things, or a presence in his home while alone numerous times. It went down like he was supposed to pick up my sister and I after school when I was 12, but he never showed. That was uncommon. We waited and used the school phone to call. 2 hours later, we just decide to hoof it. We get to his place, and I'm pissed. I missed my kids' shows after school. It was like 2006, 2007. Anyways, there's a loud boom. The entire place swayed. My sister and I creep back to my grandfather's room to slowly open the door and see him standing with the Bible clutched in one hand, raising it towards the light bulb he had turned on in broad daylight. Soon as the door opens, enough to see his head, it snaps towards us. Teeth bared like a wild animal's, eyes wild. My grandfather spoke, and it didn't sound like him. Almost like more than one voice. He said, "Get out of here, honey." And he's never called me honey. It chilled me to my core. My sister and I walked all the way across town to get home. That was the last day I saw the male role model in my life, as he was arrested and out in prison for molesting my sister, who was with me that day. Now, on to the event that made me a sincere believer as an adult. When I was 19, 2 of my buddies wanted to know if ghosts were real. They began looking up haunted sites in town. I was extremely apprehensive due to my prior experiences, but there was a thrill to it all. And I wanted more experience as well due to how little I was before, and I really didn't know what to do with my experiences from the past. So, I agreed to join them. We hit 3 or 4 spots within the month, all of them duds. Some creepy pentagrams in the abandoned old school, the classic animal skull at another spot, but nothing seriously paranormal. We almost gave up. But that's when we found it. I've done much more research on the site now, and always will before going to some old place next time. But yeah, we found the spot alright. Pretty sure it was a full moon night, and around 10 or 11. We decided to go to this old abandoned cemetery of a town that no longer exists, but was a graveyard for those who lived in the town called Spadra in California. A now removed mansion cemetery with hundreds of years of family lineage and important townsfolk came from this long forgotten Californian town. My 2 buddies immediately chickened out. My best friend came though, and is already walking towards the cemetery. It's daunting with the full moon. It's brighter than any moon I ever saw. I remember thinking, but somehow the path for the cemetery still became pitch black midway through. Since my best friend is already heading in, I caught up and remembered thinking there's only one rule. Don't step on a grave. We walk the path. We're halfway through when it gets dark, and somehow I misstep directly onto a small grave. The exact millisecond my foot lands on the grave, an invisible weight of a ton of bricks is on me. I'm frozen, eyes wide, jaw dropped. The weight squeezes the wind from my lungs. The pressure causes me, frozen in mid-step, to begin to have tunnel vision. I freak out and remember my best friend, Adam. I said his voice in my head, but it didn't come out. It rang in my head. I was still frozen. I yelled his name again, but louder. Adam! And somehow ripped free from the tunnel vision. I snapped back into reality and turned my head to see my best friend, 3 steps behind me, exactly like he was before I stepped on the grave. Frozen, mid-step, just as I was. His eyes wide, mouth open, jaw on the floor, just like mine was. I yell his name again, ask if he feels that. He nods and slowly breaks free. All of this happened within 4 or 5 seconds, and we immediately turned around and left. Recently, we spoke about it, and I informed him that the moment I stepped on the grave, I froze. All what I experienced and how I turned around, and he was frozen as well. He had no idea I stepped on the grave. Today, I call what I experienced spiritual pressure. Something old and powerful was there. Our next story is by user HotBusiness3565. Hello. I figured I'd share some of my paranormal experiences I've been having, because it helps me to feel better, to get it off my chest. So, I am currently the property manager for an Airbnb. The owner lives out of state across the country, so I'm there a lot to clean after guests and make sure everything's in working order, etc. When I first started cleaning this property in 2023, everything was fine. As time went on, I began to hear noises that sounded odd, like loud thuds or even bangs. I chalked it off to the house being old and my imagination. Then, around late 2024 and into 2025, I began to notice lights flickering, kind of like how it was shown in the series Stranger Things. At first, I thought the light bulbs were bad and just needed to be changed. So I told the owner, she ordered some light bulbs, and I changed all of them. But then it kept happening. So then I told myself, oh, it must be the old wiring / electrical in this house. But then, since I was so focused on it and how I couldn't make it stop, I began to notice that it was following me. Now, yes, I know how that sounds. And at first, even I didn't want to acknowledge that. But then I became scared, and I started writing it down on a notepad, which light, which room, and when it would happen. Immediately after I turned on a light, a few seconds, few minutes. How long did it last, roughly? So I began researching and talking to a few electrician friends of mine and asked them about it, trying to explain it away rationally. And they all said what I was describing was possible, but very unlikely. Because if the wiring or electrical connection was the faulty throughout the house, I would have experienced something fail already, such as a circuit breaker tripping, an appliance or certain light switch not working, electrical fire, really high electric bill, none of that. So, since I was scared and trying to rationalize it away, all I heard was, it's possible. So I just held on to that and let it go. And when I would notice certain lights flickering while I was cleaning or fixing stuff, I would either turn that light off or unscrew the light bulb until I left, to force it to stop flickering. And I think that pissed it off. This worked for a while, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Then one night, while I was there after work, pulling the laundry out of the dryer in the basement, poof, the power in the entire house went out. It literally made that pew sound you hear in movies when the entire power to a building gets cut off. I was freaking out. It was pitch black. I didn't bring my headlight into the basement with me. I was trying so hard not to panic. And I was literally talking out loud to myself saying, okay, it's just bad electrical. The power finally went out like they said it would, if there were major electrical issues with the wiring. And I was next to the circuit breakers on the electrical box. So I was slowly feeling around trying to find the box and open it up. Once I did, I realized my phone was upstairs, and I didn't have any light. As I slowly started to make my way back up the stairs, the power came back on. "Oh, thank God," I said to myself, my heart racing, my breathing heavy. I quickly went upstairs, grabbed my headlight and my phone, went back downstairs into the basement, opened up the electrical box, and started looking for breakers that may have been tripped. There was nothing. Everything was on. Now, mind you, this is in winter. No fresh snowfall. It was cold, probably around 20 degrees, but not sub-zero. And not windy at all, just a cold, still winter night. I was trying to find a good logical reason as to why the power would just kill like that, but I couldn't come up with anything. And that scared the shit out of me. So I quickly grabbed my things, turned off all the lights, left, and tried not to think about it. Now, fast forward to a few weeks later, at the Airbnb. I was sitting on the couch, watching TV and waiting for the laundry to finish drying so that I could leave. And out of nowhere, I heard a loud bang, bang directly to my left. It scared me so bad, I immediately jumped off the couch into the middle of the living room, expecting to see someone or something. But there was nothing. I stood frozen for a few moments. There's an air hockey table where the noise came from, and it sounded like someone grabbed one of those air hockey pushers, the red thing you hit the puck with, and threw it on the ground. My heart was racing, and I reluctantly tiptoed over to the spot where I heard the noise, looking for something that may have fallen onto the floor to explain the noise, but no. Nothing. Everything was in its proper place. Not a single thing had been moved. So I quickly turned off the lights, the TV, left the laundry in the dryer, and hightailed it out of there. Now, a few months go by, and the owner calls me to tell me she's coming into town soon, and asks how things are going. And I desperately wanted to tell her, but I was afraid to bring it up and have her think I was crazy. As we were talking, she jokingly says, "Yeah, my brothers are convinced that the house is haunted." Crickets. Absolute silence. I don't say a word. And she picks up on that, saying, "Are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm still here," I said. "Okay, you got really quiet, like maybe what I said bothered you." "I gotta be honest with you, I agree with your brothers." "Oh no. What happened?" she asked me. I let out a big sigh and began explaining all the things I had experienced up until this point. Thankfully, she sat patiently and listened to everything without interrupting me once. I was very grateful for that. Once I finished, she told me something I wasn't expecting. She said, "Yeah, so when blank was very young," blank being her daughter, "I was playing with her in the living room, the exact spot where I heard the loud bang noise. And she began talking to someone, saying, 'No, that's not Susie, that's Mom.' And when I asked her who she was talking to, she said, 'I'm talking to her,' and pointed behind me, but there was no one there." I was blown away. I was even more scared now than before, but I was also kind of relieved because it meant I wasn't crazy, and it wasn't just me that had experienced things. So, by this point, I began to realize that the creepy things were consistently happening at night. I hadn't experienced anything during the daytime, only when it was dark. So I made a personal rule for myself to never be there or go there at night when it was dark. Following that rule had been working for a while until about 3 weeks ago when I was there cleaning again, waiting for that stupid laundry to finish drying. And it was getting late. And instead of following the rule I made for myself, I began telling myself, it's fine, it's not a big deal, you'll leave as soon as the laundry's done." By this point, I had stayed almost 2 hours past dark, till like 10 p.m. And then I was walking upstairs to put away the laundry I had been waiting for. suddenly, a loud, consistent noise. I stopped dead in my tracks, clutching the bedding, my heart sinking. It was some sort of loud crackling, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I began to slowly walk back down the stairs and realize it's the organ. Now there's an organ in the house by the front door, but it doesn't work. It's never worked. The owner even told me from the beginning that she only keeps it for sentimental value, but it doesn't work. But now, suddenly, it turned on, making a crackling static noise that reminded me of the movie Poltergeist. Needless to say, I was once again freaked the fuck out. I quickly turned it off, threw the bedding on the dining room table, shut off all the lights, and quickly left, while saying out loud, okay, I'm sorry, I'm leaving, I'm on my way out. The next story was posted by user thickfinding5834. Okay, so I never post on here because, honestly, I don't really believe in paranormal stuff. But something happened last week that has me really freaked out, and I need other people's opinions. So I have twin boys who are 4 years old, Jack and Mason, and they've never shown any interest in our neighbor who lives next door. Like they've never even talked about her or asked about her house or anything. The lady, Mrs. Chen, is probably in her 80s and keeps to herself mostly. Nice enough when we see her, but we don't really interact. Anyway, last Tuesday, I was making dinner, and both boys came running into the kitchen, absolutely hysterical, like crying and shaking and could barely talk. I thought maybe they got hurt playing or something, but when I finally calmed them down, they kept saying, "The sad lady told us Grandpa's coming." I was so confused, because we were just home alone, and there's no way anyone could have gotten into our house. All the doors were locked. I would have heard someone come in. I asked them what sad lady, and they both pointed towards the living room and said, the one by the window. There was literally no one there. I checked the whole house, thinking maybe someone broke in or something, but nothing. Doors were still locked, windows closed, and there were no signs of anyone being inside. But here's the really weird part. My dad, their grandpa, lives across the country, and we haven't talked in about 6 months because we had a falling out. The boys have never even met him because this happened before they were born. They literally don't know that he exists. So I'm trying to figure out where they got this grandpa thing from. And Jack starts describing this old man with glasses and a blue shirt. Mason jumps in and says, "Yeah, and he had a hurt on his face," and touches his own cheek. I swear to God, my blood ran cold because my dad has a huge scar on his left cheek from a car accident when we were younger. There's no way my kids could know that. I've never shown them pictures, never talked about him around them. I try to convince myself that they were just being kids with active imaginations. But they were so specific about details. And they've never made up stories like this before. They kept insisting the sad lady was real, and that she told them Grandpa was coming to see us. Then yesterday, my mom calls me out of nowhere and says my dad is in the hospital. Apparently, he had a heart attack 3 days ago, which would be right around when all this happened. And he's been asking for me. She said he keeps talking about needing to see his grandchildren before something happens. I literally got chills because the timing is just too weird. My kids somehow knew about a grandpa they've never met and that something was wrong right around the same time he actually got sick. Now the logical part of my brain says that this is all just a crazy coincidence, but I can't stop thinking about it. How did they know to say Grandpa? How did they describe him so accurately? And who was this sad lady that they both saw? Has anyone experienced anything like this? I'm usually super skeptical about ghost stories, but This has me really shaken up. My kids are acting totally normal now, but they still insist that the sad lady was real. Should I be worried? Is this just kids being kids, or did something actually happen? I'm honestly losing sleep over this whole thing. This next story was posted by user Snowy Furbin. So I've been staying out in my driveway pretty late while working on my car the past few days. And I keep hearing something moving around, just out of sight. I thought maybe it's an animal, because we do get some smaller guys in the neighborhood, plus outdoor cats. But I've heard something quietly say, "Hi," whenever I'm doing something and focusing. An example is tonight. I was just putting the oil pan back on after applying RTV, and as I'm locked in, holding the pan up and threading in some of the bolts, I hear a faint "Hi" from the rhododendrons. I stop and look over and, well, nothing's there. So I shine my flashlight over and still nothing. But I hear something say, "Hello," really quietly. This happened maybe 15 minutes ago. I've locked myself in my car, and I've heard 3, maybe 4 more highs and hellos from the same area. I'd like to know if anyone could provide an explanation. Is this a bird or small animal that I shouldn't worry about? Or is something actually dangerous stalking me? Like a spirit or creature? Edit. So it's an hour later. I let the RTV set, and then tightened everything up, put the car back in the garage. When I was going inside and was shutting the door, I saw a figure in my peripheral vision, standing not too far away from the porch. The sighting was incredibly brief, less than a second, so no real description other than a mostly white humanoid figure. This isn't my first time with a quote-unquote paranormal encounter, but this is the first one that I feel actually was paranormal. Here's a shorter story by user BigDominican07. To give some context to this, I live in rural southern Michigan. Since living here, I've had all sorts of encounters with a plethora of entities. This happened to me literally like 15 minutes ago. We were driving down a dirt road surrounded by the woods. This huge white cat runs across the road. Very uncommon in my area. As soon as I tried to get out of my car and grab it, I saw this tall, emaciated figure move towards me from out of the woods. I wasn't wearing my glasses, but I could immediately tell something was off. Its movements were janky, like it was struggling to move. I got back in my car and we left. Now this part of what happened is scary to me. We got home, sat in the car, on the phone with my dad for a bit. The whole time I felt uneasy. I would say that's normal for me because I'm afraid of the dark, but I felt more anxious this time. I was already almost to the porch when I heard a kitten. It was nearly identical to a kitten sound, but I didn't see it. There was this odd mechanical tone to it, like it wasn't quite real. I'm still periodically hearing it, but I'm in the house now. I was just wondering if anyone knows what it could be. I'm a little scared that it'll start tapping on the windows like stuff normally does. The next story I have for you was posted by user First Name is Agent. When I was around 8 years old, my family traveled to visit my grandmother. She lived in a small house in a small town in Texas. She had the idea that it would be fun if she and I slept out on the 2 porch swings in her backyard. At some point, I'd woken up, and I watched a tall man walk into the yard through the back gate. That alone would have scared me. But the fact that he was glowing absolutely terrified me. I only watched long enough to notice the suit and hat that he was wearing, and that he was walking towards the back door. I pulled the sleeping bag that covered me over my head, and eventually fell back asleep. In the morning, I told my mother about seeing a ghost walking in the backyard, but she was convinced I had been dreaming. But my grandmother? She grabbed a photo album and asked if the man in one of the pictures was the ghost I'd seen. And it was. He was wearing the exact suit and hat as the ghost I saw. She then explained that it was her brother, who had died before my mother was born. Every Saturday evening, he would stop by her house, coming in through the backyard to see if she wanted to go to whatever events were happening that night. Because my mother wasn't born yet, she really had no knowledge of him, and my grandmother didn't have pictures of him out anywhere, so I couldn't see. But what really drives it home for me was how stifling hot it was under the sleeping bag while I was under it. I wanted desperately to take it off my face, but I was so afraid that the ghost would be right next to me that I just suffered through it until I fell asleep. I'm 55 years old now, but I still remember that vividly. I should also explain that when he was alive and coming to my grandmother's house, it was the early 1950s, and they were Mexican immigrants. So that suit and dress hat was his only ones. Our next story was posted by user Chef Monster. I've always been a believer, but this one cemented it. Now, I've posted this before. My best friend and I have birthdays 2 days apart. His wife offered to fly me out to Pittsburgh as a treat and surprise. They lived in an old brownstone next to the Allegheny Cemetery. They had a newborn. And now I was sleeping on a cot on the floor of their living room the first night, after flying in at 11 p.m. In the middle of the night, I had this really vivid dream of a jester/jack-in-the-box creature waving its hands in my face like a kid going, "I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you." I screamed myself awake and felt immediately guilty for screaming in the middle of the night with an infant. Groggily, I set a reminder to ask them if the place was haunted and then went back to sleep. Who knows how much time passed before I woke up again and saw a person standing over me at the end of the cot. Thinking it was my bestie coming in to check on me or ask why I had screamed, I propped myself up on my elbows and apologized. The figure laughed, bent over to pick something up, and threw a plush toy at me that hit me in the face. I've had multiple paranormal experiences, but this is the first time there was physical contact. I screamed, "What the fuck?" and grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and nothing. There were multiple small plush toys in the living room, so I'm not sure if any of them could have been the one that hit me. They have a dog and an infant. Like I said, I've worked in haunted kitchens and auditoriums. I've had experiences with others I can't explain. I've seen shit throughout my life. But this was the first time I've been physically hit. The next morning, I got up, and my bestie's wife was changing the baby. I felt bad about maybe waking them, and I asked, "Hey, is this place haunted?" Without looking up, she said, "Oh, who did you see?" I described a figure in a black and white plaid shirt. Unfazed, again, without looking up, she said, "Oh, that's Ariel. She lived here before we did and died in the dining room. Just close the door and she won't bother you again." Later that afternoon, my bestie came home from work and started tending to the baby. His wife said, "Guess who so-and-so met last night?" He immediately said, cheerfully, "Oh, did you meet Ariel? She's such a scamp." Don't worry about her. That's why we sleep with the door closed. I was there 4 more nights. Slept with the door closed, and no more shenanigans. They told me other stories about her. There are many reasons why they're my best friends. Now, someone replied to this user, asking them about more information on Ariel. This is what the original user had to say. She loved Merlot. She died in a hospital bed in the dining room after a year or so of hospice. My best friend said she would specifically mess with bottles and glasses of wine. So whenever they opened a bottle, they would set out a glass for her. They said she would roam the halls and just be a prankster, but she respected closed doors. So after a few years of dealing with low-grade mischief, they just started closing the doors. My bestie said once, when he was alone during the holidays, he watched a glass of wine slide across the counter, Ghostbusters style, and had to bolt across the kitchen to keep it from falling off. They also said that there was a little girl in a white dress that would hang out sometimes in the stairway near the door that led to the attic stairs that was locked by the landlord. And there was another spirit that was distinctly evil that occasionally hung out on the outdoor stairway that the whole neighborhood knew about. This is like one of the oldest parts of Pittsburgh. It's crazy walking through that cemetery and seeing the tombstones of people that died in 1793 rather, and 85. Like, what a fucking life. Our final story was posted by user SpookyBoo10. Most of these types of things happen to my sister more than anyone else. We think it's because she was in a really bad car accident and was super close to the veil, and she hears things quite a bit. We have a very spiritual house. Like, there are things that happen and I feel like they never happened to me because I was closed off from seeing or hearing any of it, if that makes any kind of sense. Anyway, the experience that really made me poop myself and, be more of a believer happened at the Salt Lake Cemetery. There's a grave that says Lily E. Gray, victim of the beast, 666. And if you know, lots of people go to see it. A group of friends, about 6 of us, were bored and it was around Halloween. And we were too broke to go to any haunted houses, so we went to the cemetery about 9 o'clock. It was dark outside and the gate was closed, so we had to park on the street and hop over a little wall and walk down to the graves. We were just standing around talking. It wasn't very exciting. But then one of the girls, we'll call her Lucy, bent down and picked up a coin that was sitting on a grave. Everyone else says not to touch anything there. Lucy realized what she did and dropped it immediately. Nothing happened. But then after a couple of minutes, one of the boys said, "What the fuck is that?" And we turned, and at first didn't see anything. But then another one of the boys said, "No, seriously, what the hell is that?" We all looked a little closer, and maybe 7 feet away, there was this really tall, all-black figure standing behind a tombstone, as one would naturally do. We ran the fuck out of there and had to dodge a couple headstones, but every time we looked back, this thing was just gliding over everything. Like, if it was a person, they had ran super smooth. Lucy ended up slowing down a bit when we were about 10 feet from the car to take a breath. We all slowed, but the figure was still following us. This time it was only about 5 feet away. I said, "We gotta go." We ran, and as soon as we got into the car, it was gone. We then decided McDonald's was the best move after that. But once the last person of our group walked into the McDonald's, all the TVs and screens turned to static. So we just decided to go home. I told my mom what happened. She saged the whole house and me. I still can't look at that cemetery the same. Sorry, Grams, I don't know if I'll visit anytime soon. Since then, I have heard things around the house. It's never anything that makes me feel scared, more like warm and comforting. So I'm choosing to think it's loved ones that have passed on. A recent thing that happened was outside in our backyard. It was my brother, sister, and I talking outside. We have a little patio set we were sitting around. And we did get a little loud, I'll admit, and we heard a loud shh. But we all agree that it sounded like it came from the empty seat around us. There was no one inside the house. The neighbors behind our house were out of town, and the other ones are pretty far away from where we were sitting. Anyway, we all were like, who the hell's telling us to be quiet? I looked up at one of the clouds, and one of the clouds looked like those plastic vampire teeth, which felt crazy because I have a tattoo of them, since my great-grandma would wear those on Halloween. So we think it was her telling us to be quiet. I did get a good picture of the cloud before it went away. Not that anyone would care to see it, but I have it. Well, would you look at that? The sun's coming up. I hope you enjoyed these creepy ghost stories from everyday people as much as I did. Thank you to everyone who has supported us on Patreon. I don't have a list of names now, but in the future, keep an eye out for special shoutouts. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we and even you guys share the strange things that happen all around us. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get access to exclusive perks like no ads, bonus episodes, early access, and even more episodes like this. Be sure to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's a great way for others to find the show and enjoy it, just like you. See you next time.